Let's call the Capital Program Oversight Committee to order. First order of business of public speakers. Do we have any?
We have three public speakers, Mr. Chairman. The first is Jason Panero.
Good afternoon, Joe. Good afternoon, committee. I'm pretty excited about the customer service enhancements in Metro North, but accessibility has to be added to the component. And Joe, since that you're the chairman of the committee and the essential head of the MTA, when we will see Chambers Street on the Nassau Street Loop repaired, that's in a state of disgrace, and we cannot even believe that a station like that is so old that it's falling apart, when it's going to be repaired and add an elevator to that station like the others in the ESI initiative. So having that in mind, I'll see you guys on Wednesday.
Thank you. Next speaker is Rachel Faust.
Good afternoon. My name is Rachel Foss. I'm the Senior Research Analyst for reInvent Albany. We advocate for more transparent and accountable government, including for state authorities like the MTA. As the CPOC, you are responsible for oversight of the MTA's capital plans and receive updates from staff about major projects like CBTC and Eastside Access, and we thank you for your service in overseeing these important issues. However, in paying close attention to individual projects, even mega projects like these, it seems like sometimes the forest has been lost for the trees. On the last page of your materials for today, page 83, titled Capital Funding Detail, there's data that provides reason to be seriously concerned about the future of the 2015 to 19 capital plan. More than 3 years into the plan, the MTA has received only $3.5 billion in receipts, despite a total funding plan of $32.8 billion. This is only 11%. Of this, the state has provided only $65 million of the $8.5 billion in state assistance that was promised. To reiterate, 3 years into the plan, the state has provided less than 1% of its commitment and will need to find $8.5 billion more in the next year and a half. We are concerned about where this money is going to come from, and it is your job to know as board members. Slightly better, the city has provided 11%, or only $271 million of the nearly $2.5 billion. We would like this committee to ask, what does a capital plan mean when most of the funding and spending occur outside of the plan years? How will the MTA ask the legislature and public for more funds for the 2020 capital plan when it has barely begun the 2015? We understand that the state's assistance is to come after MTA capital resources have been exhausted, and the MTA may have to borrow $7.9 billion before it gets state funds. But when the MTA borrows this money, what will its bond ratings look like when it is burdened by this debt? With only 19 months left for this 5-year capital plan, we're concerned about the lack of discussion of this issue.
Please conclude your remarks.
Thank you. And looking at your dashboard, which we thank you for providing, it also looks like there is a large number of projects that have not yet been completed in the plan. Your own data states that $1.6 billion has been completed and $31 billion worth of projects have not yet been completed. So to sum up, given the large amount of the plan that appears unfinished and the lack of funds for the projects, we ask the CPOC, as the stewards of the MTA's capital plan, to provide the public with an explanation of your plans to ensure timely funding for the 2015-19 capital plan. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next speaker is Christopher Grief, if I have the name correct.
For the record, it's Grief. I cause grief. Good afternoon, MTA and board members. I'm Christopher Grife, member of the New York City Transit Riders Council. As Capital, you guys have been working on a lot of signages that are blocking with pipes and not enough lighting. We need to work on the proper safety precaution for customers or to our seniors and people with disabilities. And second, When we are fixing stations like along anywhere on our city or state train line stations, the Metro North, Long Island Railroad, and subways, we need to make sure the edges are fixed up and more secure and a little more lighting and more color so a person can see so they do not slip or fall. As you know, this year we had a lot of people have gotten hurt or fortunately passed away. We need to work on those concerning areas, especially with more accessible train stations that need to be added on to lines that are getting a lot of customers who wanted to travel on the subway with your newer trains or the newer buses, but we need to make sure that safety comes in here. So I'm asking everyone to please work on a stronger safety precaution. I know we have a subway action plan and a bus action plan, but we need to work on a safety precaution and better lighting for signages, even larger signages. Thank you.
I think that's it for all of our public hearing. Let's move forward to the minutes from our April 23rd meeting. I'll move them. Do we have any questions or comments? Second, any questions or comments? There being none, all in favor say aye. Motion carries. Now we have the work plan. Don?
There's one change to the work plan this month. The briefing on new fare payment systems has been moved from this month to next month to enable the project to report on their preliminary design review, the results of which are currently being finalized.
Okay. Before we start, we're going to go a little bit out of order. We're going to do Long Island Railroad first, since they're here, and then Metro North immediately thereafter.
And
but before that, Ronnie wants to say something.
And before we get into the meat of the reports, I just wanted to give the committee a sense of the work that's been going on behind the scenes. Don Spiro and Michael Jugerald have been working with the McKissick Group, and I have received an education about what builds up to this meeting. And this is a work in progress, but the point is to try to bring you timely and informative information on the status of our capital program. So bear with us as we continue to seek to improve, but we are working at it.
Good afternoon. I'm Paul Dietland, Chief Engineer, Program Management from the Long Island Railroad. Today I'll be presenting a few statistics about our capital program along with the status of several significant projects. So I'll start off with a recap of our capital program goals in 2017. This chart represents the actuals we had achieved. Generally, we were on the mark or very close with what we had planned. We achieved $649 million in commitments, or approximately 95% of our goal. We started 97% of our planned projects, and we met our completions goal, and we actually exceeded our closeout goal. So here is the chart that represents the current status of our program through April of this year. Our commitment goal for this year is $360 million. To date, we've achieved $257 million in commitments. While we slightly lag in our plan to date, we fully anticipate achieving our overall 2018 goals. Of the four planned starts we missed, all are in the procurement process, with one anticipated to be awarded later this month, and the remaining three scheduled for this summer. On the completions front, we lagged slightly. One is scheduled for this month as we coordinate track outages and access, and the other one that we lag on is the mainline second track signal equipment package, which we'll actually complete this summer. So we continue to take a proactive steps to ensure we keep delivering to plan, including regular meetings, project status reporting, and a process to escalate critical issues. So now mainline double track. So as you may recall, the double track project split between two phases, funded in the 10-14 and 15-19 capital program. At the project's conclusion, the Long Island Railroad and its customers will have the long-desired two tracks running between Farmingdale and Ronkonkoma, providing the service reliability, operational flexibility, and opportunity for reverse peak service that currently does not exist on the corridor. So the double track project is well underway, and we're pleased to report that we continue to progress the project on an accelerated schedule to achieve beneficial use late this summer. This will mean the start of two-track service on the corridor. In the Phase 1 area from Central Islip to Ronkonkoma, the Long Island Railroad continues active testing and commissioning of our track and signal systems. This is a significant effort requiring shifting of tracks, in some cases up to 7 feet, the cutover and testing of new interlockings. Track, third rail, communication, signal, and station infrastructure is being installed and tested in the Phase 2 area, or western portion of the project, by both third-party and Long Island Railroad forces. Close coordination between the Long Island Railroad and the third-party contractors allowing us to resequence work to mitigate delays that were experienced in the signal equipment fabrication and to bring the project schedule back in line with our current plan. We are aggressively working towards completion of the double-track segments and, of course, two-track service later this summer. The current project budget is $387 million, and as noted, the project estimated completion is $432 million. That's a $44 million increase since last reported. This was included in the recent plan amendment that was presented and approved by the board. Major drivers of this EAC increase are added scope elements and project support costs. We added signal power motor generators as we completed the design. This upgrades some older assets to provide greater reliability. Of course, there were some station scope additions to improve the customer experience at Wyandanch, echoing the architectural theme of the surrounding transit-oriented development that's taking place there. And then there were some increased project support costs to bring the project in a little sooner than originally planned. The customer, of course, and the railroad will benefit from an advanced construction schedule and earlier second track operation date by providing that approved operational flexibility and reliability that we need. It'll reduce the number of work zones trains will have to go through on their way into Manhattan or home, and it'll allow force account to take advantage of that acceleration and free up the resources for other priority projects like PTC and third track. So here's a few photographs of our progress. As you can see, the photo on the left is in the Phase 1 area. Our forces have completed the majority of the track work, surfacing and third rail installation. And the photo on the right shows some of the new signal equipment that was recently installed and, in fact, commissioned and cut over at our Central Islip interlocking. In these photos, the contractor continues to install track and systems for Phase 2. The contractor is responsible for installing new track and systems, as well as the design and construction of Wyandanch and Pine Lawn Station platforms. The photo on the left just shows some surfacing, and the photo on the right shows some flash butt welding equipment for some of the continuous rail. Our Long Island Railroad force account continues to perform work on the existing track and systems, and we remain responsible for the overall system testing and commissioning. So here's some photos of the ongoing work in our station areas. Both Pine Lawn and Wyandanch were originally single platform stations. They're now being upgraded to account for the second track. The photo on the left shows the new track, platforms, and ADA ramps in construction at Pine Lawn Station. And the photo on the right shows the new track, some footings, and of course a new overpass and elevator towers going in at Wyandanch Station. We're doing a fair amount of off-site fabrication to accelerate the schedule and minimize impacts to our operation, as well as meet our critical path schedule objectives. So now Morris Park. Recapping what you already know, the existing shop was built in...
Paul, excuse me, Commissioner.
Before you move on from mainline second track, does the railroad have in mind a new schedule for when that work is completed, like reverse peak trains or some such thing?
Yes, so we do have some additional trains we will be running reverse peak. I don't have the exact timetable with me, but we do plan on doing that.
And that would be effective September or?
Yeah, right after the cutover. The new timetable will go effect and likely right then.
Thank you.
Morris Park, again, built in 1889. The antiquated roundhouse will be replaced by a new, more efficient and higher capacity facility, better equipped to maintain our current and future diesel locomotive fleets. That'll provide some more reliable service to our customers and a better work environment for our employees. We'll be building the new shop spaces, an employee facility, and material storage warehouse, as well as some yard work. A design-build contract was awarded to Railroad Construction and their partner AMCC with the designer AECOM in December 2017. That was slightly behind our November planned date as we wrapped up the procurement process. The physical construction has started last month. It's on schedule. Beneficial use remains the first quarter of 2020, and the project remains within budget. So this is just an aerial photograph showing the new facility superimposed over top of an aerial photo of the yard. As you can see, it's a highly active yard. In addition to maintenance of equipment folks that work down there, there's all of our engineering disciplines have space down there. There's very little free space. So to mitigate impacts during construction, we had a small business mentor program contract implemented to remove debris, create fence storage, and consolidate parking. This is allowing us to continue our operations while we're building the facility. Since the award, the contractor has issued several advanced design packages, including the 100% track and 90% civil foundation plans. Long lead submittals for industrial equipment, the drop tables, bridge cranes, and alike are nearly complete, mitigating one of the more significant schedule risk elements that was identified in the risk assessment. Design reviews and other submittal packages are progressing on schedule. So here, the contractor has performed existing ground slab removal left over from the former shop space that was once on the site. This picture shows installation of shoring for the excavation of the new drop pitch foundations. Those will be about 30 feet deep. Previously identified in our risk assessment was a risk of subsurface obstructions due to the historic use of the site. We had included an allocation in the contract for removal of these unforeseen structures. At this time, with the removal of the existing slabs and the progress with foundation excavation, we feel confident that our allocation remains adequate. Of course, we continue to monitor and update the risk assessment through the life of the project. And the designer is currently developing 90% design. It'll encompass all the architectural, structural, mechanical, electrical, and power systems. The goal is to get the building shell completed before the winter season so that we can then perform much of the interior work unobstructed by the weather.
Before we move on, anybody have any questions about an 1889 facility that we're replacing? Really? I'm trying to imagine. I had to look it up, but it was only in 1879 that Edison put a patent in for a light bulb, so I don't know how they did all the work.
It's old. There's a couple folks that'll tell you that around the railroad here.
Where's the other diesel shop?
We do some work up at Richmond Hill, which is really, geographically, it's just
not
due
far
north of the facility. So it's a little bit of a track work move to get the equipment up there, but that's where we do most of the other diesel work. Okay, so Mid-Suffolk Yard. So this is one of our East Side Access Readiness projects that will expand the existing yard, Ronkonkoma Yard, to the south with 11 12-car capacity storage tracks. This yard will provide the main line with the needed East End train storage capacity for East Side Access service growth. In addition to the new yard tracks, the project will include a drill track, a new employee facility to replace the existing facility, storage buildings, outdoor laydown areas, and substations. This design-build construction was awarded to Railroad Construction in December of 2017 with a 28-month construction duration. Since last reported at our November Long Island Committee meeting, the project's beneficial use date has been readjusted consistent with a 2-month shorter duration as proposed by the design-build contractor. And the project remains within budget. So as shown in this photograph, this aerial photo, the new yard will be constructed adjacent to the existing yard operations. You can see the new tracks are directly to the south of the existing yard. Right now it's on existing laydown and open space, and the throat of the yard runs through the existing employee facility. Several structures will be built, and construction will certainly need to be staged and coordinated to maintain the critical yard operations that take place there every day and night. So with respect to risk, the Long Island Railroad, in conjunction with the Office of Construction Oversight and the independent engineer, conducted a risk assessment of the project prior to issuing our design-build RFP. In summary, the June assessment identified the mitigated 80% confidence, a total project cost at $126 million compared to the $128 million budget, and a 13-week delay in completion. As of April of this year, the most significant current schedule risks include delays in long lead special track work procurement, delays in track outage availability for our lead track tie-ins and drill track construction, and of course force account manpower availability. We continue to monitor these risks and are taking mitigation measures, including ensuring early submittal and review of track design and special track work to allow for early procurements. Of course, the project attends monthly long-range track outage planning meetings, and we take steps to coordinate and sequence force account work with our overall master program schedule to address resource planning elements. So we're early on in the construction effort. This photo shows a portion of the existing train storage yard and laydown area. The tracks here appear empty. I guess this is right after the morning peak, so trust me when I tell you, after the PM rush, this facility is full of train sets being prepared for the next day's service. In addition to those activities, we have all our engineering disciplines also have headquarters out of this space, so it's a very active yard. So right now the site's been cleared, maintaining a 50-foot buffer to Railroad Avenue on the south. We've done our surveys, our geotechnical investigations, and site grading is actually underway right now. Currently, the design builder is progressing design packages in accordance with their schedule, and we anticipate the 90% design submissions for the site work and the foundation package by the end of this month. Our new employee facility construction will actually start in June with the goal to have that facility built so that we can complete the throat of the yard. And now Jamaica capacity. So phase 1 of the Jamaica capacity improvements project, also east side access readiness, includes the construction of a new platform south of the existing platforms at Jamaica Station, as well as modification and upgrade of the railroad infrastructure. This work will address capacity constraints at Jamaica and enable the implementation of a future east side access service to the 4 western terminals. Completion of the new Platform F, its major element within Phase 1, is on schedule for beneficial use in the third quarter of 2019. The project remains on budget. To date, we've achieved some key milestones, including the reconfiguration of Johnson Yard. We did some force account track work to create a south bypass, tracks in April of 2017, all this to make room for the new platform. We also continue to monitor project risks and force account resource needs to coordinate those to ensure that we do not cause any schedule impacts. So currently, the third-party construction work is ongoing. As you can see on the left, we've modified our track spacing to make room for the new platform. We completed our pile, 180 piles installed, and the pile caps. And on the right, you can see that the platform support structural steel is also underway. This work is right in the middle of the Jamaica complex between 2 active tracks, so it's a delicate balance, but we're able to move work forward safely and efficiently. So here's some track and signal construction elements ongoing. Last year, a new crossover was installed in Dutton Interlocking just outside the Atlantic Tunnel portals. The associated modification of the signal system is currently underway. Up on the left is one of our new signal bridges. Up on the upper right, new switch heater equipment for the turnouts. And lastly, the lower photo just shows some of the new signal cases and equipment that was recently installed for the new control of this crossover in Dutton Interlocking. We expect to cut over this new crossover in the fourth quarter of this year. So, and finally, we've begun the design for the second phase of the multi-program Jamaica Capacity Improvements project with a design that was awarded this past December. The Jamaica complex was constructed in 1913. The interlocking, switch, and platform configurations, while adequate for that time, cannot adequately support the level of service that will be required for our future operations to Western terminals. In short, our maximum capacity is limited by the physical layout. Jamaica Phase 2 represents the completion of our master plan for Jamaica. It'll establish state of good repair of all of Jamaica Railroad infrastructure, including replacement and upgrade of track, critical power, and signal systems. We'll extend the existing platforms to a full 12 cars, and we will build 2 new track routes east of the station to increase train throughput. We will also strategically install higher speed switches both east and west of Jamaica to increase our train speeds through Jamaica. Construction will follow in future capital programs. This concludes my presentation.
Commissioner Albert.
I understand the reasoning behind the Jamaica reconfiguration. I just discussed this with Pat Nowakowski before he left, but is there anything that was done in the track layout that would preclude through running to Brooklyn?
The track routes will still exist from the existing platform.
So it's really the service.
Yes.
You could do off-peak shuttle service to Brooklyn, but you could do some through service to Brooklyn during the rush, correct?
And we've been asked to review our service plans. We understand that.
Thank you.
Yeah, with regard to the question Commissioner Albert just asked, how much longer do you estimate it will take a rider who, compared to the present through service from Brooklyn to Ronkonkoma, say, how much longer will that take on average after these improvements occur?
I mean, at this point, during peak hours, we anticipating running trains to and from Brooklyn roughly every 7 minutes in the peak hour.
Yes, but how long? How much more will that add to the commuters' travel time?
Depending on the existing train connections now typically allow for about 3 minutes, so we're probably looking at another 4 minutes. But it would depend on the timing of the train, the service that the people take. Currently, the majority of our customers actually are transferring in Jamaica.
Yeah, across the platform.
Right.
Yeah, not taking a safari up and
no,
over.
I understand.
How long does it take them, do you estimate them to take them to actually physically move themselves from one location to the other?
I don't have information from our customer flow, but I'm sure it's, in the order of two minutes or so.
I mean, again, Commissioner Brown is asking, now,
yes,
when you have a through ride or an across the platform transfer, the time required to go up over to platform F and down and complete your trip, and hopefully you haven't missed a train while you're making that movement.
Oh, understood.
Yeah.
And I think that's certainly why our president has asked us to take a closer look at the schedule.
But why don't we get you back some information as to what some of those assumptions are?
The assumptions are going to have to deal with once East Side Access is opened, what is the usage going to be so that we can have the proper
That's the point I've made is until we know where people are going to go, we don't know where people are going to go. And we can make all the assumptions we want at the moment. We need to see exactly how many people are going to transfer, where they're going to transfer from, and then based upon the flexibility, make decisions based on real numbers as opposed to assumed numbers.
And can I just add that if you're on a train and you're seated, you're likely to continue to Grand Central or Penn and switch to a subway going to Lower Manhattan rather than have a 3-seat ride. You probably would opt for the 2-seat ride, because otherwise you'd have to change at Jamaica, at Brooklyn, and you see what I'm saying.
Joe, further on the same subject, if you can humor me for a little while. That a lot of these things become self-fulfilling prophecies, the way Mitch places it. Clearly, people will be more likely to elude Brooklyn in their commute, currently the fastest growing station in the Long Island Railroad, and utilize, I guess, either East Side Access or Penn, and crowd onto those East Side trains a little bit more, or shuttle down from, or not shuttle, fly down from Penn and the exquisite service on the West Side. But so to the extent you discourage people from using Brooklyn, more of them are going to go elsewhere. So a lot of this is going to be baked into the cake. And I suggest that the reasoning behind this has changed since the project was originally inspired, in especially with regard to Metro North accessing track space in Penn, and now with the availability of the mainline third track, which was not available when you did these things. So the service planning going on here to disenfranchise Brooklyn, and two, with regard to future commuters, with regard to the reverse commute. How are you going to treat the Brooklyn reverse commuters? Are they going to be given a little? I mean, I don't, if it's 7 minutes. If it's a train running every 7 minutes, I understood it was train running every 15 minutes, but I guess that's off peak. But nonetheless, how many of them will be running in the opposite direction? I doubt you will be running 7 trains an hour, or a train every 7 minutes in the opposite direction. I certainly hope you do, but and so in that sense, any reverse commuters will be faced with a 20 or 25 minute frictional penalty every time they take a ride. And to balance that against the occasional delay caused by a conflict in Jamaica is a very poor marketing concept, especially considering the development of Brooklyn and how many people from Long Island are now accessing Brooklyn for a variety of elements.
In the last 3 or 4 years, we've made a number of changes, and most of them are steps ahead for us that have been valuable and worthwhile. But some of the projects that we're still working on were developed many years prior, and I do think that what everybody is saying is it's time to take another, not just Long Island Railroad, Metro North subway, but a regional look at how we're connecting the people that live in the metropolitan area, and also consider some of the trends that we're seeing in the populations and where they're working, so that maybe we can better serve our customers.
As was mentioned, Phil is asked to look at the schedule because I think it's a function of the changing demographics.
Right.
And what's going on as to whether or not, what are the more popular routes, whether it's on the reverse commute or the regular commute, that continue into Brooklyn, so that there are some of them that you don't have to get off and it'll be a single seat. So we'll be able to look at that. Having been a reverse commuter, I will tell you, it was always easier going in, but on the way out, I would end up standing, and which is going to go to my next question, standing outside, regardless of the temperature, for for 20 to 25 minutes for the very next one to come, because we don't have the track space to be able to go in that direction. If I might, Norman, just a question: will new platform F be covered the way the other existing platforms are?
Yes, new platform F will almost match in architecture, almost perfectly match in architecture, including waiting rooms and full canopy.
Yes, Norman.
One other point I'd like to make is you just authorized in the Finance Committee the Freedom tickets, or not the Freedom ticket, what do you call it, the Atlantic Terminal. And so adding another frictional expense to those commuters, just now when you offer, I mean, it seems to me very counterproductive.
Well, it's a pilot, and we have to also, one of the public speakers actually talked about why not having it end at Hunters Point, why just Brooklyn, and all of that. So, next. It comes next.
Of course, it's a 6 to 12-month pilot. What we're all talking about here today is after East Side Access begins, and that's much further out.
Right. Any further questions? The report from the independent engineers. Mohammed?
Good afternoon. The IC agrees with the status of the Long Island Railroad projects as presented by the agency. Our 4 reports, starting on page 63 of your CPOC books, state each of the project's top risks. Lastly, our periodic reviews of the project risk logs show that the agency is taking appropriate steps to mitigate the top project risks. That concludes our report.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for the IEC? Yes, Susan?
With respect to the double track, which, as Mitch will attest, is everybody's looking forward to with bated breath, you've identified 4 risks that have to be met in order to maintain the schedule.
Yes.
Resequencing, and from what Paul said, Mohammed, I'm confident that's moving ahead. Change orders have to be processed, and because the entire agency is focused on trying to get its change orders out better and faster and more completely, I have a lot of confidence in that. The last 2, availability of force account labor and availability of track outages, those have me a little more concerned. So my question is twofold. One is, are these the highest risk? And in your opinion, how difficult will it be to make it? And my second one, I think, is we know, well, actually, in the Suffolk Yard, we're recognizing that track outages are also a risk. Track outages are a risk everywhere. And we also know from the Long Island Railroad Committee that this summer is just loaded with events that are going to mob our trains, which is all good. But it makes for a more difficult time to have track outages. So my second question is, to what extent does the IEC look at all of the programs that we're doing to see whether the mitigation steps in one project are likely to impact the mitigation steps in another?
Okay. Commissioner, we agree with you. Those 2 risks, the weekend outage and the force account availability, are the top 2 risks to this project. Now, the force account is actually, in this specific project, saving the day. There was some delays as far as signal equipment delivery, which the force account signal installation is actually mitigating. But this project is on a very fast pace at this point. Absolutely no flow. So if this force account is taken away from this project, this tight schedule of end of August completion will be a challenge. That, and lots of the work is done during the weekends. So the weekend work hours are taken away, again, for a project which has no float, which is counting on these weekend closures. Making that milestone will be, again, a big challenge. Correct me if
Dr.
I'm wrong.
Metzger, if I can interject, one thing that we've been doing is we've been taking a regional approach to outages, as you know, pretty effectively for the last year or so. And that I think that if there's any question about whether those outage requirements can be reconciled, I think that there's no reason the IEC couldn't have transparency into that regional outage schedule so that they can validate or at least ask questions about the probability of any of those outages being pulled or lost in the process. Because that process is actually, the Eastside Access folks have control of the pen, but it includes Amtrak, Long Island, and everybody, and it's actually a process that's working reasonably well.
Thank you.
If I could just add that on a programmatic level, you asked about the force account, and we have just recently met with Paul and his group and assessed the situation with respect to mainline double track PTC, Eastside Access, and third track. And our review has been, quite eye-opening to us. They have a task in front of them. They're quite challenged, but it seems that they have the appropriate level of people on mainline double track to complete it as they said they were going to, and then reassign those folks over to the other projects like PTC going forward. So we do review those documents.
Well, we want it all at the same time.
Sure, of course.
Any further questions, comments? Thank you very, very, very much, Paul. Now we on to Metro North. Come on up, John.
Good afternoon. I'm going to start off on slide 9, which is our commitments and our completion goals for 2018. The technology is not caught up, but if you've got it in front of you, I'll just start, and then hopefully it'll catch up. The first is the commitments goals. We have a $783 million commitment goal this year. Through April of 2018, our goal is $222 million. We have committed about 193 of that, so we're 86%. So we're in good shape there and moving forward. On the completion side, we have a goal of $464 million and a modest goal through April of $2.5 million, and we've exceeded that as well. So I think in both cases we should get to our both goals in 2018. On slide 10, we're going to talk about some major projects that we report on every 6 months: Harmon Shop replacement, customer service initiatives, station improvements, and Superstorm Sandy restoration resiliency. There's 2 projects there. The first project is the Harmon Shop Design Build, Phase 5, Stage 1. We've talked about this probably for a couple of years now. We're doing 2 shops in this phase. 119,000 square foot consist shop, which will be a facility for inspections and unscheduled repairs, as well as a 74,000 square foot support and wheel shop electric multiple unit annex. That'll be right next to the shop. This project is within its $316 million budget, and it's about 93% complete. The scheduled completion did slip from the last report. We had it last time at April. It's now slipped to August. That's due to delays in procuring some alternate third track support brackets that are important for the shops. We're also looking at a possible delay, a further delay from some industrial equipment that we have. We've got 3 pieces of equipment, 2 wheel borers and 1 axle lathe that are late. We had another factory acceptance test last week that didn't go as well as we expected. We're meeting this week both internally with our maintenance of equipment people who are basically our customer on the capital side, and also with our design builder to see how we can work that out. So we'll continue to track that. On slide 12, there are pictures of both facilities. On the left is the Conship shop, and on the right is the EMU annex. As you can see from these pictures, they're very close to being completed. The 93% is pretty accurate. We've shown over the course of since demolition was done and excavation, we've shown a series of progress, and we're moving forward. Stage 2, which is the final stage of what we set out as a master plan, probably in the late 90s. It's a $442 million project to replace our electric car shop, be a 250,000 square foot facility, 6 tracks, basically for running repairs. We're working through a design build procurement. We have gotten 2 design builders. We've shortlisted, and we're expecting BAFOs this week. We're moving towards a July board approval process and an August award. There were 2 risks that were identified as part of this project by the IEC. One was bid premium over budget, and the other was a risk of rebid. We think as we get closer and closer to making the award, those particular risks have dissipated. We don't think those are going to become a factor as we move forward. On slide 14 is the customer service initiatives. This is a $220 million initiative, multi-phase project that includes upgrades to our customer service infrastructure. So that's the big boards and the gate curtains downstairs in Grand Central Terminal. We're going to make initial improvements at 20 outlying passenger stations and also other facilities such as 525 and GCT North End Access, et cetera. Last fall, we awarded 8 contracts, a variety of them, some design contracts that we needed to get 100% design of specific systems, such as the head-end central control for all these systems, as well as some design build contracts. We also awarded a construction management to a construction management firm. So those are all awarded end of last year and moving forward. We had some overlap with the MTA concessionaire. They're providing 160 customer information signs that will be able to run both advertising as well as customer information for the railroad. Any later phases of this work would move into the next, we fund it as part of the next capital program. We have 66 more stations in New York State, and the state of Connecticut, if they decide to move forward, has 36 stations in that state as well. So right now, we're in the early phases. We're in mobilization of any people that are doing design work or construction work. We're doing site investigations, and those are ongoing. Slide 15 shows some of the improvements we're making. One thing that's not shown here, but is very important, is we have a old central control facility or central control system that drives the information out to all the signage, either the big boards or the gate curtains, anything out to our stations as well. That is old. Its reliability is suspect. Its capacity is at its limit. So that's one of the first things we have to replace. These are the things that our customers will see, but the central control obviously is an important part of it. Moving from an LCD technology to an LED technology, much clearer. The big board itself, which is now LCD, when it's LED and has a new central control, will be able to put out more information. It will be more flexible. We can change information more quickly than the current system, so it'll be a vast improvement for our customers. The picture in the lower left is an example of our outlying stations where, with the advertising concessionaire, we'll make improvements that have an advertising component as well as customer information component. And we also have CCTV, which is something that we have in some locations on the railroad, but we're going to be expanding it to, our goal is to expand it to all our stations. Again, the risks that the IEC identified, there were 3 of them. Multiple interfaces between all the contractors in the railroad. So you have actually have 7 contractors out there in the CM, but you have 7 contractors that have to work together. Unforeseen site conditions, particularly downstairs in Grand Central. One of the contracts is to replace what we call the central plant, which is essentially the wiring that goes from the head-end control down to the signage. And those were probably strung, 20, 30 years ago, and they obviously, once we get down there, there's risk of site conditions. And then our Metro North support. The railroad is faced with a challenge of making sure we have adequate flagging, CNS power people that can support these projects. It's a challenge across all the projects, and this one as well. What we did to try to mitigate that is we brought our CM on as soon as possible. That firm, as well as the other firms, are now working at integrated schedules, so we can understand the relationships of them all, try to mitigate that risk, and also help us identify what Metro North support is needed to make sure that we can advance this project in a timely manner. The next project is the Station Improvement Project. This is a $136 million investment awarded in the end of last year to Halmar Associates. 5 stations: White Plains, Crestwood, Port Chester, Riverdale, and Harlem 125th Street. On slide 18, there's a lot of information here. I'll try to summarize it. Basically, we're trying to make it state of good repair improvements at the stations, making improvements to waiting areas, drop-off areas, providing better customer information, things as simple but as important as bathrooms, both at 125th Street and White Plains, and then as well try to introduce some new technologies there, Wi-Fi, charging stations, etc. White Plains is I'll sort of stop at White Plains for a minute. White Plains is the third largest station in the territory. A lot of service there, both inbound and reverse peak. It was built in 1987. It is best described as tired, and I can say even more bad things about it. But most of the work here, 65% of the work here, is going to be state of good repair work. The improvements we're looking for at the other stations as well. I'll show you some pictures of them so you can see what's being done. We're looking to make improvements and deliver them in phases over the next couple of years. The first phases we're looking to are by the end of September of this year. At White Plains, 2 entrances at the south end, Main Street and Hamilton Street. We're looking to make improvements there. You'll see them improve lighting, customer information, etc. At Riverdale, like Crestwood, we're trying to make improvements in we call the kiss and ride area. It's basically a drop-off area, either intermodal, either taxis or people getting dropped off or picked up, as well as the overpass at both those stations. Riverdale will be done by the end of September. As I said, the other Crestwood will be at a later date. Portchester, we have a larger scope of work, but we're looking to simply paint the Westchester Avenue Bridge, which doesn't sound that sexy, but this year is the 150th anniversary of the village, and this is this bridge in Westchester Avenue is a main entry point into the downtown of the village. It's an area that we've gotten comment/complaint for probably a couple of years on it, so we're tackling that one first for this year. At the 5 stations, just as a sidebar, all of these stations are ADA compliant right now. White Plains Station, we're going to replace the existing side platform, which has, as you come off that platform, you can go right down to the street, out of the right side of the door as you're going outbound. You can get to an elevator and down to the street, so it's ADA accessible and compliant. But if you get out the right door by mistake, you're stuck with stairs. When we replace that platform, we will put in a new elevator. So on the other side of the train, you get out on the outbound side, you'll be able to get to an elevator.
You may want to reorder the names on top, because Riverdale is on the lower left and Portchester's on the lower right. And that's not the way it reads on top. So.
Okay. I haven't gotten to that slide yet, but if you can go back one slide, I think it's one slide. Yeah, thank you. So this is White Plains. So as I was speaking about at White Plains, in the top left is Hamilton Street. Hamilton and Main Street are underneath bridges. They are dark. It is unclear. It's not clear where the entrance is. So what we're doing is making improvements to the lighting and signage. We're putting totems at these locations to enhance the customer's ability to know where they're going. Top right is White Plains, the main entrance. We're going to expand that as well. And the bottom 2 slides are really the improvements we're making at the platform level. This is where all of our customers are going to. This is where our ticket office is. This is where our waiting area is, where our bathrooms are. We're going to move a concession area up here. So these improvements will be vastly, I think they'll be really great for the customers. So getting to your comment. So top left is actually a picture of Crestwood, but we'll make similar improvements at Riverdale to the overpasses. Top right is Harlem 125th Street. We've got a couple of issues here. This is an after picture. If there was a before picture, there would be a kiosk in the middle of this area where these 3 people are walking. On days where we're selling tickets, it's one of the biggest ticket office sales locations for us. It would be overrun with people, very crowded. People that are trying to get to and from the train, to and from the street would have trouble doing that. What we're doing is we're creating in the northwest corner a ticket vending machine area similar to the areas that we've done down in Grand Central. Gets people into a specific spot. We're replacing the bathrooms. I didn't mention it at White Plains. The bathrooms at White Plains and here are in bad shape, particularly at this location. There are security and customer service issues. People use the bathroom, they go in it, and lock the door and they stay in there for a number of time. The police have to try to roust them out of there. That's a challenge. What we're going to do here, in addition to improving them, replacing the fixtures, et cetera, we're going to put in stalls and the stalls can be locked, but the doors cannot be, so that the police can do a better job of patrolling. They can walk in and see if everything's okay from time to time. Bottom pictures, Riverdale on the left, Port Chester on the right. So these are improvements in the Kiss and Ride area. The last projects are related to Sandy. The first one is a $318 million two-phase design build that Judd Law and TC Electric are doing along the Hudson line from the Bronx to Croton-Harmon. We're in phase 1A. That was just completed. We've reported before this is 22 months late. We reported last time it was 21 months late, so it's just this minor slip there. We are now in phase 1B from Terrytown to Greystone. Same type of scope of work that we've done before, and then we'll continue in phase 2. We're doing CNS and signal power raceways, basically conduit. We're doing cross-track conduits underneath our track, and we're trying to, where we've identified locations, elevate signal boxes, RTUs, snow melt systems out of the flood zone. So basically trying to, if another Sandy happens, these things will be elevated 4 to 5 feet above the right-of-way, so that piece of equipment will not be damaged. 21 months, I think we reported on before. Just as a reminder, there were some issues at the very beginning of the project where the design builder had not completed enough design to begin field work. That cost, I'll say us, about 6 months. They had early challenges in their productivity. At Scarborough Station, they had trouble getting underneath the platform or around it. The choice was going underneath it. Ossining, there was challenges. There's a wall there near the prison. Originally, we thought we were going to do most of the work in the ground. We found that was not possible, so we ended up doing most of the work on the wall, and just a minor amount on the ground. That took more time than anticipated. We encountered more rock than anticipated in certain locations, so that delayed us. That probably caused by itself just those types of items about a year more. And then last fall, we had a Army Corps. We were waiting for an Army Corps approval to do work on what we call the Croton Causeway, which is south of the Croton River Bridge. It's a causeway between Croton Bay on the land side of it and the river on the other side, and that caused another 3 months. So those are what have happened thus far. We're in phase 1B, and their productivity has been much better in the last number of months, and our view is that we've done a couple things, and I'll talk about that on the next slide, they should be able to maintain that delay, which is not a great thing, but not a great thing to say, but they should not be losing more time. In phase 2, they're at 60% design. They have to continue that design. They're doing markouts to figure out exactly where the runs are. They should be complete in March 2021. The next slide shows some quick pictures of the challenges that we've talked about a little bit. You've got sort of river, riprap, some real estate, track, and then some real estate on the other side. So basically we have had to sort of jam this between find real estate where we could go that had enough room to put conduit and put infrastructure where there wasn't already utilities as well. So we're faced with that challenge and it caused some problems. The next slide is the budget. So the budget's $318 million. That's a $16 million increase. About half of that was due to unit item quantity adjustments change order. That was a change order that we brought to the board and was approved last month. When we went into the project, we did a 30% design. We identified what types of units we thought we needed to complete this project and what amounts we felt were necessary. What we found, we had to change some of those units. We had to introduce new units, and there was a cost to that, some of which we had to negotiate. So that accounted for about half of it. And because of the delay, our forces have been out there longer, so we had to replenish flagging support, CNS and power support. We continue to monitor those costs. We have continued to monitor the responsibility for those costs. The railroad will look toward to assign as much as possible to the JV. The JV will look for the opposite. So we'll continue to look at that. We continue to assess and accrue liquidated damages, and as we move forward, we'll look towards making sure we've got the budget to the best of the railroad's ability. The last bit is just some of the mitigation that we've had in place for a while. This is on slide 25. We have provided more flag support than required. We are going to maintain that to try to increase the production rates. What we did in phase 1B and we look to do in phase 2 is we I'll say collectively did a better job of identifying where there was less infrastructure and more real estate to make these improvements. So we moved a lot of work from the track 3 side to the track 4 side, which is the river side, and we believe that has resulted in more productivity for the JV. It provides just more real estate and less utilities. We're looking to reduce, going forward, we're looking to reduce the trough size of our installations, so looking to move from a 20-inch trough to a 12-inch trough, for example. Takes less real estate, less excavation. We think that'll be more efficient. And we're looking to fortify the Hudson River shoreline more, basically to create more real estate where we can for conduit installations. The last project is the substation project. We have to replace 3 substations, Croton Harmon, Riverdale, and Terrytown, that were damaged during the storm surge. It's a $44 million project. Its completion date is September of 2018. That's a slip as well. We've had challenges with testing and commissioning of these substations. There were some waterproofing problems by the contractor. The testing has taken longer to tie into our SCADA system, the supervisory control and data acquisition system, which basically ties in these substations into our power system. So our power control center at Grand Central can control these facilities, are aware of the condition of the facility, so they can manage them. And then there's some time requirements that have delayed it with coordination with Con Edison as well. The last slide is just the pictures that are of the substations as they look today. We have to do the last commissioning and the last tie-ins to the SCADA system and Con Ed, and these things will be able to come online this year. That concludes my presentation. Happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions, Metro North? Yes, Dr. Metzger.
Fortifying the shoreline is a good idea because it would clearly give you more workspace and less opportunity to slide into the river. Don't you need all kinds of permits to do such a thing?
We'd have to work with the Army Corps.
That hasn't worked out well in the past.
Yeah, post-Sandy, we were able to do some. We actually did some fortification post-Sandy. And we believe that there are very select locations where we may be able to do that in a short time frame. We've been having that conversation. So you're right. There is a risk of time frame, but we're trying to pursue it.
But you do have some emergency situation that you...
Correct.
Carl?
What's the status of the 4 Metro North stations, new Metro North stations in the Bronx? Is that now on your radar screen? Not yet on your radar screen? I don't know whether it's a question to you or Jano or...
Essentially, I think it's being looked at by Metro North and MTA looking at those 4 stations as part of a review of the whole Penn Station access project. It's definitely on the radar.
Yeah, the status is that the procurement for the general engineering contract is underway. It's at a pretty advanced stage. We're in the middle of some negotiations with Amtrak of some preliminary documents. They're not actually meant to resolve all the issues, but it's a negotiation. And I hope that we'll be able to resolve that and bring the procurement so that we can begin final design to the board in the next month or so.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Okay. Independent engineers.
Good afternoon. My name is Mark Cosmetti, and I'll give the report on the Harmon Shop and the Hudson Line. The IEC report for the Harmon Shop can be found on page 28 of the CPOC book. At 93% complete, the project remains within budget. There is presently an 8-month delay in completing stage 1. In the IEC's opinion, there is still a potential for additional delay pending commissioning results and installation of permanent power. In response to the current delay, the agency is delaying the award of stage 2 1 month. For stage 2, a risk assessment was performed. The the results of which will be presented to you at a future CPOC at the time of award. If there are no questions, I'll continue on to the Hudson Line. The report on the Hudson Line can be found on page 35 of the CPOC book. The Phase 1 budget and estimate of completion were recently increased. The IEC is forecasting that the budget will likely need to be increased further to cover additional support costs in Phase 2 due to the extended schedule. The 22-month delay to Phase 1 is nearly the same as previously reported. It is unlikely to be recovered. Recent productivity improvements, coupled with a realistic project schedule, lead us to believe that additional delays may be avoided. If there are no questions, I'll turn it over to Chris Adams for the customer service initiatives.
Good afternoon.
Hold on 1 second. Hold on.
Sorry.
Yes.
This isn't
Dr.
really
Metzger.
a question. I guess it's a curiosity. The board has embraced design build, but with the impression that it means we aren't going to get any change orders and that there won't be any additional costs and all kinds of things that are incorrect impressions for any project. There have been change orders on the Harmon shop. And frankly, I think a shop project is very difficult. It's easy for us because our customer isn't aware of inconveniences, which gives us a certain flexibility, but it's difficult because we have to keep our trains running. Technology is always changing, and we find things as we go in these old shops. Do you think there has been an inordinate number of change orders on our design build issues?
Actually, it's interesting. Both Harmon Shop and Hudson Line have had almost the same number of change orders, but the value on the Hudson Line is much more than on the Harmon. Harmon, the change order value is very low. I mean, they went with a very low contingency, and they're not going to spend it all. So there have been a lot of changes, but in both directions. There have been deletions of work, additions of work, changes and things. So Harmon Shop, it's been fine. On the Hudson Line, this job was so risky from day one just because of the 30 miles of differing conditions that you have to deal with. The design builder is given 1,500 test pits that he can take in just one of the phases, and that really wasn't available to the preliminary designer. So the preliminary designer figures out where he thinks this trough can go, and then you start doing the test pits, and you realize it can't go there. So the number of change orders on Hudson Line, no, it's not surprising. And in Phase 1, the contractor really didn't do a great job of locating the trough. In the upcoming Phase 1B and 2, he seems right now to be doing a much better job. He's moving the trough to locations that seem to be better. So, minimizing the number of track crossings. And so I think going forward, it's going to be better. But yes, there were a lot of change orders on that one.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, Chris?
Once again, good afternoon. IEC's report on the customer service initiatives starts on page 32 of your book. The program is in the initial stage of construction with overall 8% complete. It is possible that the current substantial completion date of April 21 could be achieved, providing appropriate levels of support for force accounts and outages are maintained. The IEC is concerned that coordination between a number of contractors can be an issue. Therefore, an integrated program schedule is needed. That concludes my report.
Any questions? Okay, there being none, on to item number 6, the status report of the capital program commitments and completions. Ronnie?
Thank you. The commitment and completion performance highlights through April start on page 75 of the materials. In 2018, the agencies plan to commit a total of $7.3 billion, which include 43 major commitments being tracked. Through April, the agencies made 12 major commitments. 7 were early or on time. 5 were delayed but now have been achieved. Through April, the agency's committed $2.1 billion versus $2.6, which is the year-to-date goal, but forecast meeting or exceeding the commitments in 18. In terms of completions, the agencies plan a total of $6.3 billion in completions, which include 39 major completions that we will track. Through April, the MTA has achieved 2 of those major completions, and while 2 are delayed, they still are expected to be achieved this year, as are the balance of the completion goals. That concludes the report.
Ronnie, are there any questions? There being none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Seconded. All in favor? Thank you all very much. The Diversity Committee, which is should start at 3 p.m. in another 20 minutes.